Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Info Tap. I'm glad you made it. We are potentially getting a higher pay raise than previously expected. I'm going to dive into this, share this with you. We are on the path here and want to stay ahead of the wave. Before we jump into it, I want to throw on a special thank you to Richard Leenham, 7856. Richard Leenham, thank you so much for the super comment, super chat. I really do appreciate your support very much. Thank you again, Richard Leenham. All right, so jumping into this, the COLA, cost of living figures, are in for last month. April came out here in May of 2025. That is where we are at. I'm going to jump into this here. The April 2025 Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, CPIW, released May 13th, was 314.243, 1.8% above the fiscal year 2025 baseline of 308.729. The May 2025 figures will be announced June 11th. That's Stan, for those that don't know. He's my rooster. He was an accident. The CPIW figures from the end of the fiscal year, July, August, September of 2025, will be compared to the fiscal year 2025 COLA baseline to calculate the 2026 COLA. Whatever. So, here's the thing. There's just to have this one in the back of your mind. The CPIW is what is currently used, which is a little bit weird because it's the Consumer Price Index for consumer urban wage earners, and the idea that Social Security, which is typically going to be retirees or those who are maybe disabled or what have you, aren't, in my opinion, aren't really considered urban wage earners. So the CPIW tracks the spending for that big group of people. There has been calls to change how the COLA, cost of living adjustment, is calculated. And the calls for that are really most often saying switch it from CPIW to CPIE. The CPIE is Consumer Price Index for elderly. Stands on one. So the idea is that would more closely align with the spending habits, patterns, costs associated, all that stuff, the inflation impacts for those who are receiving Social Security. On average, the increase would be about a quarter, maybe a 0.2% increase year over year if you went back and changed all the figures to the CPIE. It's a smaller indice with less data, and so there's a little bit of contention there. But nonetheless, there has been efforts both on the House and the Senate side to change how they calculate COLA. All right, now let's jump into this on the USA Today's page here. There's a little article on it, and I'm going to share this with you because we are seeing an uptick, a increase in what the projection is going to be for COLA. So in 2026, Social Security COLA estimated is 2.4% after latest inflationary report. So let's dive into it. Social Security checks could increase by 2.4% next year. Now, I know it's Social Security is what we're talking about. The VA does not have the authority to calculate its own COLA. Every single year, the legislators throw out some piece of legislation that says, effectively, VA, you're allowed to mirror the COLA adjustment of Social Security and apply that to various benefits at the VA. All right, so you can insert veterans benefits as well when you hear Social Security. So Social Security, and by default veterans, checks could increase by 2.4% next year based on May 13th's Consumer Price Inflation Report. According to estimates by independent analysts, overall consumer prices increased 2.3% from a year earlier, down from a 2.4% rise the previous month, and the smallest annual increase since February 2021, according to the Labor Department's Consumer Price Index, a measure of average changes in goods and services costs. The so-called CPIW subset of the Consumer Price Report that's used to determine Social Security's cost of living increase rose 2.1%, down from March's 2.2% increase. And remember, I said that, it's not happening today, but there has been efforts. And if you think that there should be a different way to calculate COLA, and you now know, if you didn't know, that there were efforts to change how they calculate it in a potentially positive way, a higher increase, maybe reach out to your congressional members, let them know that you support a different way of calculating COLA. All right, the official 2026 COLA will not be determined until October because it depends on the inflation data from the third quarter of the calendar. You hear it different ways. You hear the last quarter of the fiscal year. You hear the third quarter of the calendar year. Either way you say it, it's July, August, and September. And so this is collected between those months, July through September. Analysts often track these estimates in the months leading up to the crucial time period of July through September timeframe. The 2.4% COLA, cost of living adjustment, that increase in pay, would be the smallest increase since 2020 and raise the average retiree benefit in April from $19.97 per month to by about $48. In January, the average beneficiary received 2.5% increase, which amounted to a $50 raise to $19.57, up from $19.07 in January of 2024. So moving on, while the estimate that we're talking about here is 2.4% for the COLA increase, it is higher than last month's forecast. So it's one of those weird things, right? It's good, but it's bad because, it's inflation is also trickling up. So if it's basically supposed to be a measure to protect your money from eroding due to inflation, the reality is, in my opinion, is that your COLA tends to be like this, right? And your inflation tends to be like this. So yes, they both trend up, but the gap is just getting bigger and bigger the years that go by, the decades that go by. You ask anybody who's been on a fixed income through Social Security, VA benefits, whatever it is, for more than a decade or two, and they will tell you that gap is getting bigger. Anyway, so the from a good news perspective, we are seeing an uptick in the COLA prediction, up 20 basis points, 0.2%. It is still, it goes on here to say, it is still my underestimate that the final 2026 COLA, said Mary Johnson, Independent Social Security Medicare Policy Analyst. So just to read that whole thing again, while the estimated 2.4% COLA increase is higher than last month's forecast for 2.2%, it still may underestimate the final 2026 COLA, said Mary Johnson, Independent Social Security and Medicare Policy Analyst. Quotation here, Trump administration tariffs are only beginning to have an impact, raising consumer prices, she said. How could Trump's tariffs affect the COLA? That is the question that I think that we're looking at now, and how will we see and what will happen? Will that make any impacts prior to the July, August, September to impact what COLA is going to be calculated at? Anyway, I'd love to get your thoughts. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Have a great one. And remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.